This looks like a job for Lex Luthor. Watch this review here with a look at the retro action DC Superheroes Lex Luthor, which has some very cool retro-y packaging, as seen here. These things retail for about 20 bucks at Toys R Us, and you can also find them online. Other figures in this wave include the online-only Green Arrow, originally sold at Matty Collector, Superman, Lex Luthor, Green Lantern, and Sinestro. Wave 2 will have Batman with a Bruce Wayne head, cowl, which you can attach or remove if you please, and then Two-Face, Aquaman, and Black Manta. Between the price and the fact that I don't really collect things like this will probably be the only review I do for this entire series, unless Wave 3 has, like, say, the Joker in it, or some other character I really want. Lex Luthor comes with his very own Superman busting chunk of kryptonite. Actually, all the figures in this wave come with an accessory except for Superman himself, but, you know, he doesn't need it because he is Superman. The colors on Luthor's costume are all very crisp and vibrant, quite a bit better than you may be able to pick up with this camera, but, you know, just look at some pics and you'll see. One issue I've noticed so far is that the costume itself seems to pill in places. I don't know if it's just because I've moved the arms and stuff around, because I've had them for about a few weeks and I've played with them a bit. I have allergies right now, so it sounds a little stuffed, but, you know. As I mentioned way back when I actually shot the packaging, I don't really have plans to buy a lot from this line. Tons of reasons, actually, but I'll get to those in a few minutes. In terms of good points, I really do like this head sculpt here. I like the entire look of the figure. He's a pretty sizable figure. He's about 8 inches. Here he is next to the Superman we saw earlier, the Public Enemies Wave, which is about 6.5 inches, so obviously he's not going to be able to scale with your DC Universe classics, but these things kind of do their own sort of deal. You'll also notice I keep saying figure because these are retroaction figures, not to be confused with dolls just because they have cloth clothing and, you know, little accessories, and in fact you could probably change their clothing and do all sorts of dress. Actually, these kind of are like a bit like dolls, aren't they? Another reason why I probably won't be picking up many of them. Just kidding, I'm not that shallow. Or am I? I don't know. But as mentioned, these have some really cool body sculpts, which, because of the really thin material on the costume, really shows up. The only problem is that I believe they all use the same body sculpt, so your Lex Luthor is as muscular as your Superman. So, a bit of an issue, but eh. I would show you the actual body sculpt. You can remove the costume, I assume pretty easily, because there's these little clips on the back to anchor it in, but it's just going to be a hassle to put the thing back on, and frankly, I don't want to see Lex Luthor naked. I don't know about you. If you're really interested in the body sculpt without the costume, check out Mandalorian 130's video. They did a bunch of them. These little gauntlet things are attached to the actual material of the costume itself. It's like stapled on there so you can't remove them. I guess it makes it more stable, but at the same time, I don't know. In terms of articulation, we have a fairly good amount. We have a rotating wrist, a point here at the elbow, but unfortunately it will not rotate side to side. I guess the articulation's a little gimp to represent the original stuff. We have a shoulder joint with a usual range of motion. No rotating bicep, of course. A head that looks like it moves, but there it goes. Hadn't had any reason to move it yet. Movable waist. Now here's where I don't like the figure, actually, because they have like rubber band joints in the lower section. So when you try to move it like this, it'll just swing back like that, or the leg goes up, leg goes back down, leg goes up, leg goes back down. So it's even a little bit tough to get him into a good sitting posture, because the body will instinctively go back like this, or I guess if you have a really firm chair or something, and he might knock himself over, but unless you don't, but you know. Beyond that, it's just normal leg with a full range of motion. Knee. The joints are pretty good besides that portion there. And then, I don't know if the foot would or wouldn't move because we have this boot here. Actually, I can't even feel a foot underneath there, but... on the whole, he looks cool, but there's just so much I'd want to do with this figure in terms of posing that you cannot. For example, the traditional hands behind the back pose posture isn't really capable because you don't have a bicep movement or any movement at the wrist. Because, you know, villains kind of have that trademark posture where they're doing a reverse flex. Let me pull somebody out. Kind of like Mongol here, except for his arms don't do it really well, but, you know, it's the sort of posture you see Darkseid in all the time. It just shows that they're really evil looking and evilly contemplating something. Speaking of evil posturing, you can't get him into that traditional sort of fingers crossed pose or one hand over the other, just because we don't have any movement here at the biceps, or the elbows can't move this direction, so he can't have that lost in deep evil thought. And, you know, for an evil mastermind like Lex Luthor, it's kind of a pose I would want to put him in, especially if I bought more figures in the wave. Kind of had to be Injustice Society or, you know, an Injustice League or whatever, just gathered around, and, you know, him at the head of the table with his hands crossed like that, but you can't do that. Head bowed a little. But, you know, just a little pet peeve. Again, the more you actually move the figure around, the more the costume shows it, and it does pill, so the material's a little bit on the cheap side, maybe. Also, it's worth mentioning that the center of gravity is a little bit different just because of those rubber banded joints. You can get him to certain postures, but the joints have a tendency to move back towards a certain location, so, you know, he will have a topple back occasionally, and, you know, it takes a while to really get a hang of it, and of course being in felt doesn't help much, but even on normal surfaces he still has these kinds of issues. You know, I'm really not comfortable recommending this figure to anybody, in part because, I mean, this won't be everybody's cup of tea, because it's a marked difference between this and just a normal action figure, but also because there are just enough little small qualms in terms of poseability where they really could have done a little bit more, but I guess they went back to being more like the old Mego figures. So, I mean, it's a good thing if you're kind of retro, but for the rest of us who enjoy posing the figures and, you know, setting stuff up, it's a little bit problematic. Plus, you know, this is a higher price point. If you do want to pick up one of these figures, though, you know, because a lot of people do just because they like to test the waters out with one figure, or just because it's so different that you have to have like one from the series. If you go into like a Toys R Us, you'll probably find a lot of the villains, but the heroes will be long sold out. I think I've only seen Green Lantern maybe once in stores, and Superman never. Which means Superman, I think, is possibly the weakest looking figure of this wave, just because I really don't like the head sculpt from the pictures I've seen, but, you know, everybody has their own preferences. Personally, I thought Lex Luthor probably looked the best, that or Green Arrow, but Green Arrow I couldn't get a hold of. Matty is going to reissue him very soon, as of this day that I'm uploading this, obviously, so I think it's like a May sale or something, so if you are interested in picking up a Green Arrow, that would definitely be the time to do it, just because he does cost quite a bit more if you try to get him from secondary sources. I mean, the rest of the retailers don't charge too much more than just conventional retailers for the rest of the line, so until next time, folks.